Well, I'm going to do solo, man. Good evening, everybody. Don't touch this dial for the next 30 minutes because you're on a ride for your life. This is the Volpe Bazzo Report. I am your host this evening, Anthony Bazzo. My co-host, Dominic Volpe, because we're taping here on June 5th, is out campaigning because he is running for the Cortland Town Council. And there's going to be a primary in September on this. And my friend Dominic, who did not get the Democrat endorsement but is challenging for it, but did get the independence endorsement from the Independence Party. And as of this taping, we don't know where the Working Families Party's going, but I guess you could bet real money that he'll get it because every time he ran, he always got it. So I don't think anything is going to change. And so when the show is airing, when he comes knocking on your door, he's not stalking you. He's looking for your signature. And you should give it to him. And you shouldn't sign anybody else's petitions until you sign his because it matters who gets the signature first. And the ones that are second, they get disqualified. And not just that signature, but they usually get to throw out the whole petition for mistakes. So you don't want to make a mistake with this. You've got Dominic, who has been lived in Cortland, had a business in Peekskill, has friends on the town government in Peekskill, Cortland, and also in Yorktown. And this makes it easier with the mutual issues that go with these towns to have somebody there that actually has a knowledge of these issues and of the towns and of the people on the boards. So it's important that this primary season in the town of Cortland, you pay attention to what's going on. And if you got to vote for just one person, I would vote for Dominic right now. And I say that not only just as my co-host, but he's my friend, and also because I know him. And I know his integrity, and I know his business smarts. And in a time like this, with everything so unsteady economic-wise, you need a smart business person that knows how to balance the books on the town board. And you also need somebody on the town board that actually lives in the northern part of Cortland. Okay, it's important that you have somebody that actually that lives there to know the issue, because there are so many different sections of Cortland, and they all have their issues, but and they all have a representative on the board, except for the northern part of Cortland Manor, and you don't want that to go on for the next 4 years. So that's what I would do with that. In Yorktown. And by the way, just one thing with Cortland, this primary is probably going to be whoever wins the primary battle for the independence line, the conservative line, the working families line, and the Democrat line. Whoever wins this is probably going to be the elected, will win in November, because for all intents and purposes as of this taping, the Republican Party has not put up a slate of candidates. They're certainly not going to put up anyone to challenge Supervisor Puglisi. And whoever they put up, there's just no party there to mount a credible challenge. The last elections where they had anybody on the ballot, the most votes they got were 30%. And so they got a long way to go with whoever they put up, if they put up somebody, to even crack 40, because they have only cracked 30. So that's where we're at there. Now in Yorktown, you've got anything but a boring summer. Nick Bianco, registered conservative, got the Democrat nod to run for supervisor as a Democrat. And of course, that upset the Republicans. because they had always given him the nod to run for the council. So they sent out a press release blaming all the ills of Yorktown and the rest of the world, by the way, on Nick Bianco. And they blamed him for everything. And I'm saying to myself, if Nick was this bad a guy, then why every time that he run did you give him the Republican endorsement? So obviously they're just like hell hath no fury like a party scorned, and that's what you're seeing there. Michael Grace has got the Republican nod. You'll probably see a primary for the conservative independence lines, which Nick has secured, but I don't think Grace is going to let him just have them. He'll probably primary on this. And you are going to have a competing tickets for supervisor of two people that have a record they must defend. This is great for the voters. And you can, and there's just no way like they could paint Nick as like Mark Oxman is saying Nick Bianco stands for, he used to be the head of the Democrat Party in Yorktown. He used to be a Yorktown town justice. And he says that Nick Bianco record is completely antagonistic to the core principles of the Democrat Party. They don't like his ideas on civil rights, women's rights, choice, and fairness. And I'm trying to figure out where in the town government, what Yorktown official being elected, and I don't care what party, has any say on a woman's right to choose, on civil rights issues, on the right to choice and all that. I mean, the town board doesn't have this. It's not existent. I mean, Oxman is being as stupid as Serafina, the head of the Republican chair that blamed all the ills on Nick. I mean, they're both upset because it's a conservative. Conservatism spans party lines. Okay, because you have Democrat conservatives, you have Republican conservatives. And so you have the major parties say, oh, he doesn't believe what we believe. Well, but the thing is, Nick believes in something, and he's got a record that he has to defend that he believed in something, and you can't just pigeonhole him. And so when you get a guy like Oxman trying to deny Nick, trying to call a party meeting and deny him the party nod on national issues that town government has nothing to say about, is the height of stupidity. You have the other race that's going to be on everybody's list is for Yorktown Highway Superintendent, because you're going to have a primary on the Republican side between the party nominee, Gregory Bernard, and our sitting councilman, Dave Paganelli. There was only a one-vote difference in the nominating convention between Bernard and Paganelli, and that's why you're seeing a primary, because there were just two, you could see the party was split on this if there's only a one-vote difference. And Paganelli got the conservative nod, and Tom Diana, on the Democrat, who's the Democrat nominee, got the independence nod. So you'll probably see a primary on those lines, too, to see who has those lines in November. You have to understand, in New York politics, you can add the total of all the lines for your vote total. And this is New York is only one of two states that still allow this. The other 48 states, whatever vote you have on that line is the vote you have. You can't add them up. That's why you have multiple candidates. You have multiple candidates running in other states on different party lines, because each party has to field its own set of candidates. I'm not happy with the way New York does this, because it gives the minor parties too much power. And you've read in the papers the same way that I do, that this party is for sale or that party's for sale. Well, if they had to run their own slate of candidates because their own votes matter, then you would eliminate that. So you're going to have a primary in Yorktown. And again, as far as I'm concerned, the best of the lot is Dave Paganelli. because the man knows how to do a budget. The man knows how to allocate manpower. This is what he did for over 30 years of his life, running the banquet hall and Travelers Rest, because you had to know how to budget your money and allocate the manpower and who's going to be where, so they're not tripping all each other. You're not electing a highway superintendent to push the lawnmower. This is not his job. I mean, it's been done, but it's not his job. You're electing a guy that can present the budget, have a working relationship with the council, and also with the state legislators to get grant money and know how to move people around. This is important, and that's really the most important. And of all those qualifications, Dave Paganelli has the best. I want to move, and Peekskill, you have a Republican slate and a Democrat slate, all filled. There's a competition for the mayor and for the council seats. And last week we had Mary Beth McGowan on, and we talked about the Peekskill races there. And I'm not going to reiterate them this week, except to say that the voters in Peekskill actually have a credible choice on the direction they want the city to go. If they don't think the city is going in the right direction, you have a Republican slate of respected candidates. Okay, these are not just names to fill up a ballot line so it doesn't remain empty. These people are credible, and they're going to put up and it's up to them to give people a reason to vote for them. You have people on the council running for their second term, like Mary Beth McGowan and Andy Torres. You got the mayor running for her fourth term, and you have Drew Clarkson, who's been in office since 1999. If you can't run a campaign saying where you differ from these people with their established record and what your ideas are, then you have no business running. If you're going to run a campaign, well, I'm not them, and they're no good, and their kids are ugly, you deserve to lose. And that's the campaign they've been running. And they bring, and I'm going to tell you right now, here's the clue you're going to know that the Peekskill Republicans are bereft of ideas and are going to lose. If they bring up Target. Because that was such a non-issue, it's always been a non-issue, and if they bring it up again, you know that they are bereft of any kind of new ideas. Now, let's go up to the state government in a minute, and I want to discuss this. Steve Katz, they had a new vote on medical marijuana in the assembly, and Steve Katz changed his position and was the only Republican to vote in favor of medical marijuana. And you would think that he is the first politician ever in his life to ever change his vote. I mean, when a Democrat does it, he has evolved. When a Republican does it, it's pandering. No, I can buy because Steve did more I talked to him about this issue. I wrote a column on medical marijuana, and he read what I wrote, and he took it and he did his own research. And he came to the same conclusion I did, that the benefits to the suffering outweigh the fear of exploitation, of fraud, of misuse. And it does. It does. There's got to be a point where compassion outweighs. I mean, if we're going to stop doing everything because somebody might misuse it or use it incorrectly, then let's ban the automobile and bring the speed limit only down to 30. Mandatory 30 with a speedometer that can't go above 30. Or why don't we try again and ban alcohol? I mean, there's so many things that, let's ban computers with the stalking and the bullying, the cyberbullying. Why don't we just ban everything that has a potential for being abused and misused? No. You weigh the greater good. And in the case of medical marijuana, the greater good is the easing of the suffering. And in the bill, there was a mechanism where there would be licensed places that could grow it, licensed places that could sell it. So it minimizes the risk of abuse, because they like liquor stores, they would have to have a license, and that they would be heavily regulated and monitored like beer and wine stores and liquor stores are. So, but yet there's still abuse, and it's going to happen. But we can't outlaw morality, and we certainly can't outlaw abuse. It happens. You just make the punishment high enough that the chances, that the risk is not worth the punishment. So I congratulate Steve for changing his vote. You should congratulate him, because common sense on this won the day. Now, will it get out of the Senate? They're a bunch of old fuddy-duddies and a bunch of pandering fogies. And if they don't vote for this, then all you can say is that whatever senator doesn't vote for medical marijuana just enjoys people suffering and think they should just die and get it over with. Because, like I said, the fear of what might be does not overcome what is, and that is pain and suffering. It does not overcome what is. And so, on this issue, these other newspapers that say that Katz shouldn't have been involved in the vote because of his recent problem was solved. And if we're going to eliminate politicians from voting on anything they have had an involvement in, then nothing's ever going to get voted on different areas, because it's tough to live life without doing things. And very few people go through life without any kind of brush. I mean, do they not vote on new traffic laws because they might have got a ticket? And they may act because they thought the ticket was wrong? No, it doesn't work like that. I mean, this is just an editorial board in another paper that decided they had something to say that was stupid and had no problem printing it. By the way, talk about writing in another paper. Remember, you could see my column every week in the Yorktown News. I forgot to mention that. So Steve should be congratulated for his change. Greg Ball made an announcement that he's not going to run for Congress. He's concentrating on the Senate, because there were a lot of rumors that he was going to challenge for the run for Congress. Now, I believe that there is what do they call that thing on food? A date stamp, expiration date. I believe that all this stuff has an expiration date. I believe he means it now that he's not going to run for Congress. But in politics, next year is a lifetime away. A lifetime away. And if the rumors are that Nan Hayworth wants to run and Greg is stepping aside for that, I think that could easily change in the next year, that there won't be a primary, because the voters already rejected Hayworth for the President Guy Mahoney, who's in office now. And that was a dumb mistake, by the way. I mean, Hayworth had no reason to be defeated. She did exactly what she was sent to Washington to do: stop the madness. And I just don't understand but how the voters, she does what the voters want, and they still vote her out, other than the fact that when the state we did the redistricting for the last election, because you have to do the redistricting every 10 years too. They put 30,000 more Democrats in her district than she had the last time she ran. So maybe the game was rigged against her. And maybe Greg sees the numbers and says, I can't beat those kind of odds either. So if that's the case, then he's got a conundrum, because he said, he would term limit himself. And what is his term limit? So we'll see where that goes. Now, we have other issues coming up here. We have what is going on in the assembly. What happened in the assembly, okay? You have a lot of corruption scandals hitting New York legislature, and it's been predominantly falling on the Democrats in elected office. Of the 45 or 46 people that have been under investigation, indicted, or convicted, I think only 5 are Republicans. The rest are all Democrats. Hence the silence on most of this corruption, because we know if it was a Republican or a conservative, everybody would want their head on a platter, because Republicans are corrupt and they're mean and they're evil. And Republicans even have this war on women. I haven't figured out where the war is, but I can tell you there's a war on women with the Democrats, because you just had a recent scandal going on where Assemblyman Vito Lopez, who has been forced to resign after an investigation of sexually harassing female staff members in his office. And when 2 of them protested against the harassment, they went to the Assembly leader, Sheldon Silver, and he bought them off, writing out with $103,000 of taxpayer money, of which had to still get the approval of the state controller, Tom DiNapoli, and the Attorney General, Seidemann. And none of these old Democrats saw anything wrong with buying the silence of these women with taxpayer dollars. They all had to sign off and cut the check. And none of them saw anything morally wrong with buying the silence. Except, and it would have worked too. It would have worked too, except that once the silence was bought, Vito went back to harassing 2 more women who came public with their charges. And now the cat's out of the bag, and now they have a major investigation where the cover-up is detailed, but the only fault the investigators find are with Vito Lopez and his harassment. The enablers, the people that broke the ethics law by not reporting it, the people that broke the state laws by doing everything behind closed doors, they were not found guilty of anything in these reports wrong, just bad judgment. Yet, this stuff should have been reported to the Ethics Committee the first time around. This paying off people with taxpayer dollars to silence them. I mean, can you imagine if this was done in the private sector? Or better yet, if this was done by anybody that had a Republican after their name? I mean, but through this whole thing, 2 women that did not have to be harassed and assaulted were, because of the cover-up. Yet, the governor says that what the assembly leader did in covering it up was not worse than what Vito Lopez did in doing the actual action, except that if you didn't have the cover-up, 2 of those final actions wouldn't happen. But Cuomo's not going to, needs the assembly leader to get his agenda through, and he has said many times he's not going to endanger his agenda over these corruption things. He's not going to do it. So Silver gets to stay because Cuomo thinks his agenda is more important than the citizens trying to do their job, being harassed on the job from a party that says they're supposed to champion the rights of women. Well, these women had their rights violated, and they tried to sweep it under the rug, and the enablers of this violation are said to be, they just made a mistake. Yeah, right. Try that argument if it happened to you. And then you have these women's rights groups that are all going around, that are always damning Republicans in their war on women. They're silent in this matter. They're totally silent in this matter because they receive state dollars. And if they decide to go after the governor for defending the enabler, then they may not get any of the tax dollars. So they're selling out their mission statement to continue to receive money, which, in our present day culture, following the money is understandable. It's not right. I mean, but, and by rights, they should lose all credibility in any issue regarding women now from here on out. They should have lost all credibility because they are defending, again, they're not calling for Sheldon Silver's ouster for the cover-up. They're not calling on Cuomo to force the ouster because they want the money. Then you have the members of the assembly. The women were invited to have a breakfast with the assembly leader and vent their anger. So they had a breakfast behind closed doors, and they called the assembly leader dirty names. And that's where it stops, because none of them called for his removal. In fact, according to the strongest statement to come out of that breakfast was by our own Assemblywoman Sandy Galev, who said, we have to see what comes next in the way of reform. Well, if you're not going to reform the leadership, what kind of reform are you going to get out of that leadership? How can, because they want their goodies that only come from the assembly leader. They want their committee chairmanships, of which they get paid a lot of money for. They want nobody to run a primary against them, which the assembly leader could very well, mount against them a primary challenge. This is all everybody covering their behind, instead of doing the right thing, which to me is a no-brainer. You got it. From the lessons of Watergate, it's always the cover-up. And look what they did there. They put people in jail. They forced the president to resign. But is it because they were Republicans? No, the cover-up is always wrong. And this is what you had, was a cover-up. And it was a cover-up of the most heinous kind, because people actually got hurt. Nobody died in Watergate. Nobody got hurt in Watergate. A lot of the stuff that happened was only talked about. They said Nixon wanted to tap somebody's phone lines. He wanted to investigate this person. But they never did it. Here you had an actual cover-up of crimes, by state law crimes, harassment, and paying off these people. And everybody's silent so they can protect their own little butts and their own little fiefdoms and their own little gravy trains. And I'm going to tell you right now, especially you women out in the audience, if you think there's a war on women going on now, as long as this leadership remains in place, you lost that war, and you did not lose it to the Republicans. You lost it to the Democrats. And until you demand that these organizations that represent you and that these elected officials that represent you change the leadership, you lost the war. And if you still vote for the Democrats, then you too are an enabler of this culture of corruption and protection and fiefdom, and you have nobody to blame but yourself as this state goes in the toilet. And I just can't believe that people would put their party above this kind of just garbage. This lechery. I just don't like it, and I just hope one day you don't. And this is what I have to say. We've come to a close of the show. And what say you? Okay? I want you to think about what we said. I want you to go out and sign those petitions when the candidates come to your door. They're not stalking you. They're looking for your signature. Make sure you give Dominic your signature before you sign anybody else. Make sure you give Paganelli your signature before you sign anybody else. These things are important. Make sure you vote on the primary day, because that's probably going to be the more important election than November's election. Because a lot of these decisions that are made on the primary day are going to be the ones that will turn what November's results are going to be. So don't wait for November. If you're registered to the Republicans, Democrats, Conservatives, or Independents, you will be having a primary for your elected town officials. Vote. Don't stay home. Don't say you're too busy. Because if you don't vote, you deserve the government you get. Thank you very much, and good night.